I hope you're having a great day so far, and today we are going to look at the best game played by William Steinitz, the very first world champion of chess. So, it's a game between William Steinitz and one called Bardelman, played in Hastings 1895, and there is something dramatic happened in this game, and also a drama related to this game actually. So I will talk about it later in the video. So stick to the end and then you will know a very nice piece of history. Okay, e4 by Steinitz, e5 by 1, knight to f3, knight to c6, and we have a very nice Italian game. Bishop c4, bishop c5. And not pawn to b4, the Ivan's gambit, Steinitz played pawn to c3. Okay, knight to f6 and pawn to d4. Back in days, it was a nice gambit line. E takes, c takes, bishop b4 check, knight to c3. Now the knight into e4 is still considered the main move in this position, where white generally just castles and give up the pawn. You cannot really take on c3 with the knight. And well, in this position, white has some compensation, but theory suggests that if you know what you are doing as black, you should be fine. But in 1895, in this position, instead of capturing the pawn on e4, William Stein's opponent, one called Bardelman, played a novelty at that position at that time and played pawn to d5. Okay, makes sense. So let's see how Steinitz deals with this novelty. He took on d5, knight takes d5, and just castle the king. Okay, now the knight is no longer pinned because there's no king on e1. So the knight into d5 is definitely a threat. That's why his opponent played bishop to e6. A better move would have been to take on c3 first and then play bishop to e6. But okay, who wants to give up the bishop like that? But okay, so bishop to e6. And Steinitz plays a very nice move, bishop to g5. When you have options to block this like this, move the queen or block the attack, there is only one good move in this position. One played bishop to e7, but if you play f6, there is a rule you don't want to play f6 unless you are very sure about it, and in this position you are definitely not supposed to play f6 because rook e1 basically wins the game for white. Now if you take on g5, then after rook e6 and bishop d5, let's say, and that's just a piece. And if you're playing f7 directly, then rook takes e6, and that's a nice sacrifice, removing the defender of this knight. That also wins. Okay, so f6 is not a move. Better would have been queen d7, and then the game continues. But in our game, after bishop g5, bishop to e7 was played. Okay. And here in this position, William Steinitz found the very nice continuation. He actually exchanged off everything because he saw that after like 4 to 5 moves of calculation, he has a very nice move which will ask a lot of questions to black king because it's still in the center. So he played a very nice bishop into d5, where if you take on g5, bishop into c6 comes with check, then your structure is ruined. So you rather don't play that. So his opponent played bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, and now if you take on g5, the knight into c7 check wins the pawn. So queen takes d5, bishop takes e7. Now if you take with the king, well, your king is not castling. Knight takes e7, and finally black is one move away from castling one side of the board, and either side you castle is fine for black. It's even better because there's the isolated pawn. But here, Steinitz of course played rook e1, asking the question of how you castle, because if you castle anywhere, then your knight hangs and your knight is pinned. And that's how white gains the initiative in the position. Okay, black played f6. Now f6 is important because you have to stop rook e5 followed by queen e2 and rook e1, tripling up on the e file. So well played by one court. Queen to e2, directly threatening mate in 1 right now. Queen to d7, so you have to defend it. And according to angels, rook a to d1 is considered even better to play pawn to d5 next move. But rook a to c1 makes a lot of sense. You are somewhat threatening this c7 pawn, let's say queen e4, queen f4 and stuff like that. or even queen c4 check. Let's say if you castle someday and then take on c7, can happen. So it makes sense. And that's why black played c6 automatically. I mean, it's an automatic type of move. Whenever your opponent attacks the pawn like this and you know there is no other threat than a pawn, you play pawn to c6, just get the pawn in the center, better square. The queen defends the b7 pawn in terms of any future ideas. But that's a mistake. And Steinitz took the full advantage of this mistake. So, well, you see there is the rooks are working very well. The queen is beautifully placed. The only piece is the knight, which is not participating in the game. And black is basically without two rooks right now. So you have to use your time and initiative properly if you don't want black to consolidate the position. So white to move. Try to find what Steinitz played in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. Alright. So the move in question, the move which Steinitz played, is a very nice pawn sacrifice, pawn to d5. Idea being, you are just freeing the d4 square for the knight, and that d4 square is a money square for white. I mean, you cannot really take the pawn with the queen because then it's mate. So opponent played knight pawn takes d5 and knight to d4. And this knight is threatening to go to e6 or f5. f5 being a major threat right now. Let's say if you play a6, knight f5 just wins the piece because queen cannot take the knight because of same checkmate. So that just wins the piece. So you have to stop knight f5. You can play g6, but then knight goes to e6. So Steinitz opponent played king to f7. Stopping knight f5 because now knight takes f5 because the knight is no longer pinned anymore. But here Steinitz played knight to e6. So that was the second threat. Now rook to c7 is coming in. And that will be very devastating for black if the rook lands on c7. So black played rook h to c8. A very natural move. I would have played the same. But again, Steinitz took advantage of this move. So pause the video here and try to find what Steinitz played in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. Alright. So Steinitz played actually a double attack with queen to g4. Very nice move. Threatening the pawn on g7 as you can see. But the major threat in this position is knight g5. Discover attack to the queen while the knight gives a check. So, well, you cannot really defend both. Queen into g7 is also the threat of checkmate followed by queen f8. So you have to defend that. And Steinitz opponent played pawn to g6. Okay, the second threat is on execution, knight to g5 check. It looks like black is losing, but Van Court Bardelman may have seen this position and played king to e8. And now the problem is that what you play in this position. Your queen is under attack, your knight is under attack, rook is under attack, and everything is getting exchanged off. And you don't want that, right? And if you don't want black to exchange everything off, you may play knight to e6 back, then king f7 is a repetition of the position. And black is happy with the draw. But not Steinitz. Steinitz found a way to continue in this position. So pause the video, try to find what Steinitz found in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay. So the move Steinitz played in this position is absolute brilliant. Rook takes e7. Congratulations for anyone who found this move. You are definitely looking at the thumbnail. But it looks really devastating, right? The queen is under attack, so you basically have to take the rook. Or that's what we guys think, right? But then the rook takes c8 would be just winning because that's a rook, that's a check. Then you exchange off the pieces, you are up the knight. And if the king takes, the same goes, rook to e1 check. And this time the king is getting checkmated or you lose the queen. Let's say king goes to d6. You try to run away with, but there is very nice queen to b4 check. That b4 square is always come in handy, you see. King to c7 and then comes knight to e6 check. Either you give up the queen or you play king to b8. Then comes queen f4 check. This queen swings from g4 to b4 to back to f4. A very nice idea. And then you have to break rook to c7. When after knight c7, you cannot really take, but you cannot really not take. So let's say you take and rook d8 is a checkmate. It is one of the variation given by Steinitz himself after the game. So after rook takes e7, a brilliancy by Steinitz. Well, one Kurt may have seen this as well. I mean, he might have seen this well. He was a very great player. He was a very strong German grandmaster. So he played actually king to f8, and suddenly all of the white pieces are hanging. The rook is hanging, the rook is hanging, the queen is hanging, the knight is hanging. And the problem with all of this is you cannot capture black's pieces. You cannot capture the queen anyways, like you cannot capture with any piece because rook into rook is a threat of checkmate. That is the major threat. And well, Steinitz found a very nice move. First rook f7 check. Now the problem is you cannot really take this rook and say that okay, if you take my queen, I'm going to checkmate you, because instead of taking the queen first, white will take the rook first, which comes with a check also, and then I will take your queen. So that does not work. So after rook f7 check, you have to move. If you move back to e8, then queen into queen comes with a check. It's actually checkmate. So that is also not the right move. So after rook f7 check, one played king to g8. And suddenly, it looks like everything is lost here because queen is hanging. You cannot really take because of the checkmate here. So what will you play? The rook is hanging, the knight is hanging, the queen is hanging, and rook is hanging again. But here Steinitz found the absolute mad rook move. So if you want, you can try to find this by yourself. I will not ask you to pause the video, but those who wants to do this tactics, you will feel very good about it if you're able to find this one. So the move in question is absolute brilliant. Rook g7 check. This is what one Kurt Badelman missed. This is what Steinitz played. Our absolute brilliant move. And now, if the problem is if you take with the king, then the queen takes queen comes with check, and you just lost a queen. It is very important that any piece black falls, it falls with check. That is important. And same goes for queen takes, because the rook falls with check. That is also important. So that will not do. So after rook g7 check, you can play king to f8 or king to h8. In the game, king to h8 was played. If you play king to f8, however, then there is a beautiful knight takes h7 check. And if you go here, then queen takes queen is a checkmate. And if you take the rook, again, same problem. Queen into queen comes with a check. And that's it. You lose the queen. So after rook g7 check, one Kurt Badelman played king to h8. And Steinitz quickly played this move. Rook takes h7 check. The mad rook keeps on munching pawns. And it was in this position. Well, one Badelman didn't resign actually. This was the drama what happened in this game. But it was in this position that the game ends. But what happened here is absolutely beautiful. So, well, let's first talk about the drama, because here what happened is one, first look at the position after rook into s7. He saw that there is no way he can defend this position. And then he looked at the Steinitz, who was basically looking, he was basically very happy because he created one of the best game ever played in 19th century back in days. But one didn't let Steinitz finish his beautiful masterpiece. Actually just walk away from the tournament hall without resigning, and then Steinitz had to wait until one Kurt Badelman's run out of time, and basically then he can claim his victory. So then once the time was run out and he claimed the victory, Steinitz went out to the arbiters and showed him this beautiful line, which I'm going to show you next. And when he showed this entire line, he actually announced that he has like mate in 6 or something, I think it's mate in 8. And he also said that either one loses the queen or he is going to get checkmated, and that's why he just left the room. A very bad look on one could Bardelman, because he just let the time run out. It's like very bad sportsman spirit. But Steinitz did get back at him by announcing this entire variation in the front of public. If Black King goes to g8, then here is the beautiful mad rook. Rook to g7 check. King goes back to h8. We already know what will happen after king f8. There is knight h7 check. And because there is no pawn on s7, now queen h4 comes with check. King g7, queen h7 check, king f8, queen h8 check. King cannot go to f7 because knight defends it, so king has to go back. Queen here check. If you go up, then queen f6, and after queen e6 is mate. So you cannot really do that. After king e7, queen g7, king e8, queen g8 check, king e7, queen f7 check. Same problem if you go here, queen f6 check. So king back, queen check. The rook cannot go to the c file because of the rook. So queen blocks, knight f7 check, king d7, and a beautiful queen to d6. Checkmate. So this is what happened in the, could have happened in the game, but one decided to just walk away from the tournament hall and didn't let the Steinitz finish his entire variation. Well, yeah, that was the drama. And actually, after this game, after a few years after this game, some press reporter asked William Steinitz, why did you announce mate in front of public to just humiliate this one called Bardelman? And Steinitz said that, well, announcing mate in public is certainly not a good sportsman spirit, because that basically saying that I saw this variation and you didn't. But I did that because my opponent was very rude to me. And it is true. I mean, he just left the room instead of resigning. And he also said that in one of his World Championship game against Chigorin, he could have announced mate in 6, but he didn't, because Chigorin was one of the great gentlemen of chess, and because Steinitz respected Chigorin for always playing a very nice game and always, after the game analyzing the game with him, even though they are competitors. So yeah, it was pure out of hatred, but it doesn't take away anything from this game. It's still a beautiful game and one of the best which is Steinitz played. So yeah guys, that's the game. I hope you really like this game and you like this video, and well, I will see you on the next one. Bye.